We are reading from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The dates of the events that we are going to read are March 9th and 11th, 1883. This is our online class number 50 on this holy book. It is so uplifting to think that we are now into the 50th class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. I am personally so grateful to you all for your continued support to our humble effort to reach the real purpose of the apparently simple words of Sri Ramakrishna, the real meanings of these very simple words of Sri Ramakrishna that have been written in the Gospel. Swami Vivekananda once said that one can write a big volume to explain only one sentence spoken by Sri Ramakrishna. He said, take out any sentence from the Gospel. I try to think loudly some of the interpretations that I myself heard from our revered elders, particularly from Swami Baneshananda Ji Maharaj of revered memory. I used to transcribe his class talks on this holy book from a 1 hour, each side 30 minutes of course, cassette. My sincere labor paid off. I had the opportunity to listen to his talks twice, even thrice, and read and reread them, compare them. And that gave me the rare opportunity to assimilate the ideas as far as possible, as much as possible. Secondly, when I became familiar with the scriptures, both Indian and non-Indian, I went through the Gospel again and found a huge difference from my earlier understanding between what I understood earlier and what I understood thereafter. And then when I studied or read different subjects or on different topics under the sun, my horizon of the field of the applicability of Sri Ramakrishna's messages in the contemporary context expanded manifold. And now I have learned to look at Sri Ramakrishna's life and teachings from my physical location in the West. What a great revelation it is. Words fail to express my feeling of joy in discovering the magnitude of Sri Ramakrishna's personality, whom I embrace as my ideal of this insignificant human life. It makes me proud of myself and of those who walk together with me in this life. Surely, some credit goes to my life in confinement due mainly to the menace of the virus. Blessed is the time and blessed are those who have access to such bliss in this earth. Jai Sri Ramakrishna. Let us now read from the Gospel. A devotee asked, "Can one see God?" Sri Ramakrishna: "Yes, surely. One can see both aspects of God, God with form and without form. One can see God with form, the embodiment of spirit. Again, God can be directly perceived in a man with a tangible form. Seeing an incarnation of God is the same as seeing God Himself. God is born on earth as man in every age." Yes, that is a very short passage, but Sri Sri Thakur has given hint to at least 3 ideas, very great ideas they are. Actually, there are 3 facts revealed by Sri Sri Thakur in this conversation. We have discussed this question many times, whether God can be seen. From the discussions earlier and also afterwards in this Gospel itself, what we see is that Sri Sri Thakur and others use the word see. While the questioners surely want to know if God can be seen with naked physical eyes, Sri Sri Thakur's answer meant seeing with the eyes which are converted into divine eyes, which he calls love eyes, or realizing God as the indwelling spirit in all of us. That is being told here in answer to the devotee's question. We know even dualistic religions, though a rare few of them, like Christianity, assert that God cannot be seen. They take the word seeing in the literal sense. Whereas Jesus has himself said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Then this word is interpreted as not seeing with physical eyes. It may be a seeing through an agency or a symbol, which is also acceptable. Anyway, what Sri Sri Thakur says here is at once logical and practical. It is an approach of both our dual and non-dual Vedanta. Both the dualists and the non-dualists in the Vedantic tradition accept that God is both transcendent, that is beyond the creation, and immanent, that is, he can be discovered lurking or hiding behind the creation. Their difference lies in accepting the reality of the creation. The non-dualists accept the creation to be relative. It has both relative existence and relative experience. That is why it is called relative. Then about God, the dualists say that God exists separately, parallel to the existence of the creation. The creation includes the jivas or individual souls, means all of us. But non-dual Vedanta says that God or Brahman only exists. That exists as the permanent principle, while the existence of creation is but temporary. Hence, none of the approaches deny the fact that God can be experienced. He can be experienced as the indwelling spirit or as the sole existence, only existence. And the second point that Thakur wants to highlight, that is when Sri Thakur said, again God can be directly perceived in a man with a tangible form. Because God lives in the heart of a human being, heart of everyone, in all living beings. Even not only that, but in all creation, living and non-living, moving, non-moving, in all. But about seeing God in the human beings, that has been qualified with the adverb directly, as Thakur has said. God can be directly perceived in man with a tangible form. This is the basis of our doing good to the creation, that is welfare, that being a holy act. We have to serve the creation, seeing the presence of God, hiding behind it. And more importantly, serving God in human form is a direct means of spiritual practice. A direct means. As we have elaborately explained earlier sometime, with this insight in mind, one can do welfare as an act of spiritual practice that helps one go nearer and nearer to God. The act of serving God in human form is actually a very, very, very practical way to do spiritual practices in the path of devotion. See, when we serve God in the images, in the Omkara image, in the cross, in the Kaaba stone, in the Bodhi tree, etc., it is actually so easy to get satisfaction out of our own acts of devotion. Because even if there is any defect in our acts of devotion or worship, God's image or the symbols do not express their dissatisfaction or disapproval. They don't scold us. But if we serve a human being, we know they react and may not like the way we serve them. There is then scopes for us to improve upon our attitudes and arts of serving. There is a great scope there. There is a great chance to face the reactions of our ego to those complaints of the human gods. One of our Swamis gave a nice metaphor, a comparison. Suppose you are to hug a thorny cactus plant. You have to hug it. You should prepare yourself with thick clothing so that the thorns do not enter your flesh. Yes, it is absolutely necessary to prepare ourselves beforehand. That means when we serve God in human beings, we have to equip ourselves with an attitude that we may have to face unpleasant situation. Hence, it is easy to worship God in human form or inside human form. It is easy also. And there is a story of a monk and a scorpion. The monk was living in Varanasi. Every day he, like many others, used to go to the Ganges for a bath. One day he saw that a scorpion fell into the current of the river. The scorpion was struggling to save itself. Many of those who were there, the bystanders, and observing the struggle of the insect for life, took it as a natural phenomenon. Nevertheless, seeing the fate of the scorpion, this monk of ours went down into the river and lifted the scorpion from water. As he was trying to put it on the bank of the river, the scorpion stung his finger. The monk shook his hand in agony and the insect fell into the Ganges again. Every time the monk wanted to save it, the same story repeated itself. The bystanders told the monk, "You fool, why do you bother to save the insect when it is stinging you again and again?" The monk replied, "It should be my dharma or nature to save it, as it is equally the dharma or nature of the scorpion to sting me." Of course, preparing the ego, reorienting the ego is key to all successes in our life, not only in spiritual field. You don't need to tame the ego only for serving God in the humans. It is equally important in any field of our jobs that we have to do for earning money. One lady here in Germany who works with mentally ill people told me, "Swamiji, it is so unbearable sometimes when these patients use so filthy words to me." Then she said, "Of course, it was really unbearable in the beginning. But now I have reconciled with myself. I do not take those words seriously anymore." We have to transact with human beings, humans of different kinds. Swami Vivekananda calls them Narayana or God in the form of angry Narayana, poor Narayana, cheater Narayana, thief Narayana, and so on. Therefore, we see that it is difficult to serve God in human form. But it is equally enriching because this God can talk to us, can explain to us His need and expectations, can even tell us about our defects and understand our difficulties too. Not to be angry or not to be jealous, hateful, etc. are really spiritual qualities. But then the question would be, should we be immune to things that really hurt us, lower our own dignity, etc.? Let me tell you a story, a real fact from real life. It is the experience of one of our Swamis. I would prefer to keep his name within myself. Let us call him our Swami. You know, our headquarters of the Ramakrishna order at Belmont is located on a sprawling campus on the bank of the river Ganges, Ganga. This our Swami was an assistant at the headquarters office at that time. The resident monks and brahmacharis who worked at the headquarters office had to cross some stretch of the inside road, walking for the purposes of going to the temples, going to the dining hall, to other offices inside, etc. There used to come an educated lady regularly who became mentally unstable. She was a teacher in a school at one point of time. She knew good English. From her outward appearance, it would be difficult to know that she had mental problem. She would spend long hours in Belmont until the main gate is closed. Anyway, one day our Swami had to go to the city of Kolkata for his work and had to eat his lunch an hour early. He was going to the dining hall, walking a stretch of his way along the inside road. That was around 11 o'clock in the morning. Many tourist buses, etc. came into the campus. The whole Belmont campus was teeming with tourists. And this our Swami was walking among them in his ochre cloth, Geruak robe. People knew that he was a monk. Now all of a sudden this lady with mental illness, she saw our Swami. I think she knew that our Swami lived in Belmont because they might have seen each other many times. She turned towards our Swami and started scolding him. She used any language that she knew. The reason for her anger was, it was understood afterwards that our Swami was a senior monk. He lived in Belmont. But he could not teach manners to the Belmont guards. Guards mean those who are there standing with distinct khaki dress. They are employees. Sometimes at the time of closing the main gate, these guards, most of them are young boys, would chase her out of the moat gate. She would feel insulted. Hence, she was scolding our Swami because she thought that our Swami was responsible for not controlling the guards, for not teaching manners to the guards. That was his problem. And it was his responsibility to teach the guards. So now let us hear it from our Swami's own words. I quote, the Swami says, "Then I looked around. There were about 100 visitors who were looking at me with palpable amazement. They might have thought that this monk must have done something wrong, because the language was not known. Nevertheless, I continued on my way. It set me thinking, why did I not feel insulted? Why did I not get angry? Is it because of the fact that my ego would not accept the fact that she had real intention to insult me? Or is it because of the fact that I was able to tame my ego? Then the Swami continued and said, but I can confess to you that it was neither, or maybe a bit of either. Then he continued again, I was in a hurry, so I did not bother much about it and left for my work in Kolkata. But this fact fascinated me and lingered on. As more and more I thought on this incident later, one thing became gradually clear like daylight. I knew in my heart of hearts that she was a mental patient. It was due to her helplessness that she had to behave that way. Still, the fact that remains is that the onlookers, the visitors, did not know about this, did not know about her mental illness. But what was more a fact to me is that I knew it. That was more than enough. That should concern me. And that is why I did not feel insulted. My ego did not think that I should react unnecessarily because of the presence of some strangers who do not understand the language itself. Nevertheless, it was a more intellectual understanding that kept my ego in its place. But the truth is, such very small intellectual considerations that is shown for the poor targets of our anger, hatred, jealousy, etc., would transform our own raw ego, kacha ami, into a ripe ego, a paka ami, a spiritual ego. End quote. This does not mean that we are ever denied our right to react to wrongful actions, because that is the so-called normal way of this world. But a spiritual person is and should be different, even though in a very small way, and that is the achievement. Rabindranath Tagore, the first Nobel laureate in literature outside Europe, wrote about Sri Ramakrishna, terming him as one who did not walk the so-called normal path of the world, even of the spiritual world. This I mentioned in one of our earlier classes, but it is worth mentioning this in this context here also. He wrote, before coming down to this ephemeral earth, what kind of lamp it is, I wonder, that ignites the flame of your life. O the hermit, O lover, O crazy dear, you come down to the world of the mortals. Pain and misery in this seemingly unending world resonate loud on the strings of thy soul. Yet in the midst of appalling distress of yours, you dare to smile with the happy mother. Whom do you eagerly and happily search for, while setting fire to all your own worldly happiness? Who is the one who makes you cry so bitterly, whom you go on loving constantly? You do not seem to have any worries, but who is there to support you? What is that eternal ocean of life over which you merrily sail your life's boat, ignoring the fear of death? One of our younger Swamis, who is now very famous on YouTube, he once told me an experience of his. He was being angrily criticized by senior persons on a regular basis. Obviously, this person was jealous of the young Swami's popularity. The young Swami is by training an MBA. He remarked about this person saying, Maharaj, I feel so sad. because this man is so much older than me. It is below his human values that he has so much hatred towards me, that he would think me as his competitor. Let me quote the same Rabindranath Tagore. He writes at another place, "Our humility brings glory to us, and our pride brings us only insults to our own divine soul." Some years ago, I used to visit our Chicago center that time for conducting retreats in our retreat house there at the Ganges town. The town is called Ganges, near Chicago. The Swamiji in charge of that center at that time, Swami Chidanandaji, was a very kind man. He used to invite us monks who were about 25 years junior to him for conducting retreats at his place. And imagine, he himself would attend our lectures. I have myself seen how he would sit in the front row listening to my talks. And more interestingly, the fact was that if he liked any idea from my lecture, he would enjoy it like a child and would look around to see that everybody appreciates it. I would feel as if my own father were proud of his son's performance, like that. He was free from all ego. Such cases are not rare in today's world. If our order had the tradition of giving sainthood to its monks, then the order would have at least a few thousands of them produced within this short time. Now the third point that Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Thakur discussed, that is the third fact, it is to approach God in His incarnations. This is purely an Indian concept and a discovery of Indian spiritual research spanning over a few millennia. Sri Thakur says, seeing an incarnation of God is the same as seeing God Himself. God is born on earth as a human in every age. Swami Vivekananda says, if a bull has to think of God, he will think it as a big bull. Hence it is but natural that humans will feel it completely fine to communicate with another human form, and God will also like to communicate with His children as a human being. The difference between God and His incarnations is that the incarnations do not create a new universe, but God does. Otherwise, the incarnation is omnipotent, all-powerful. Let us now read a nice passage from the book. It is recorded on the date 11th March 1883. We are fascinated to read such descriptions, like how God in His human form would behave on the day He subjected Himself to be born as a human being. That is why Shankaracharya wrote in his famous introductory commentary to the Bhagavad Gita. He writes, I quote, "There is a difference between the birth of any one of us and an incarnation of God. It is a fact that every one of us are born, and are born in, suppose, a human body. We are born and we die. We are reborn and we meet with re-deaths. And we are born being helpless under the effect of our own karma or the impressions of both our good and bad actions. But our purpose is to achieve perfection or final liberation from repeated births and deaths. But an incarnation of God is born and also is born in a human form. It is a fact. But it is not a rebirth, not a re-death. He or she has no effect of karma to suffer or enjoy. He is not born under the commands of any previous karma or impression. He is not helplessly born, being controlled by the force of the deeds of his earlier births. And the purpose of their human births is doing good to the whole world and the whole of humanity, nay, the whole creation. Hence, Shankaracharya uses two significant words here. Dehavan iva, jata iva. As if iva, he is born, and as if he takes up a body. Even while he is in human form, he knows that he is not the body, but he has a body. Whereas we think that we are the body and we want liberation of or liberation for our body. Then the question is asked, does he not behave or suffer like a human being? Yes, of course he does. They do. But they know that it is the body-mind complex that suffers, that behaves like a human being. How does he behave on the birthday of his body? That is what we are going to see now. What a great gift the writer of the Gospel has offered to humanity here. The narration is so captivating. And we come to know of such an event on this earth. That is why it is very important. So I will read it from the Gospel itself. It was Sri Ramakrishna's birthday. Many of his disciples and devotees wanted to celebrate the happy occasion at the Dakshineshwar temple garden. From early morning, the devotees streamed in, alone or in parties. After the morning worship in the temples, sweet music was played in the Nahabat. It was springtime. The trees, creepers and plants were covered with new leaves and blossoms. The very air seemed laden with joy, and the hearts of the devotees were glad on this auspicious day. M arrived early in the morning and found Sri Ramakrishna talking smilingly to Bhavanath, Rakhal and Kali Krishna. M prostrated himself before him. Sri Ramakrishna to M, I am glad you have come. And then to the devotees, one cannot be spiritual as long as one has shame, hatred or fear regarding one's practice of spiritual disciplines. In Bengali, he said, Lajja, Ghrina, Bhoy, Tin Thakte Noy. Great will be the joy today. But those who will look around and hesitate to sing or dance while being mad with God's name will never attain God. How can one feel any shame or fear when the names of God are sung? Now sing all of you together. Then Bhavanath and his friend Kali Krishna sang. I will read the meaning of this song. It is so wonderful. Thrice blessed is this day of joy. May all of us unite, O Lord, to preach thy true religion here in this our holy land. Thou dwellest in each human heart. Thy name, resounding everywhere, fills the four corners of the sky. Today thy devotees proclaim thy boundless majesty. We seek not wealth or friends or fame. O Lord, no other hope is ours. For thee alone thy devotees long with unflagging love. Safe at thy feet, what fear have we? Of death or danger, we have found the fountain of immortality. To thee the victory, O Lord, to thee the victory. As Sri Ramakrishna listened to the song with folded hands, his mind soared to a far-off realm. He remained absorbed in meditation a long time. After bathing, the master put on a new wearing cloth, all the while chanting the name of God. Accompanied by one or two disciples, he walked across the courtyard to the temple of Kali, still chanting her hallowed name. His eyes had an indrawn look like that of a bird hatching her eggs. On entering the temple, he prostrated himself before the image and worshipped the Divine Mother. But he did not observe any ritual of worship. Now he would offer flowers and sandal paste at the feet of the image, and now he would put them on his own head. After finishing the worship in his own way, he asked Bhavanath to carry the green coconut that had been offered to the mother. He also visited the images of Radha and Krishna in the Vishnu temple. When the master returned to his room, he found that other devotees had arrived, among them Ram, Nitya Gopal and Kedar. They all saluted the master, who greeted them cordially. Sri Ramakrishna went with the devotees to the northwest veranda of his room. Among them was a householder from the village of Dakshineshwar, who studied Vedanta philosophy at home. He had been discussing the meaning of Om with Kedar before Sri Ramakrishna. He said, "This eternal word, the Anahata Shabda, is ever present both within and without." Sri Ramakrishna. But the word is not enough. There must be something indicated by the word. Can your name alone make me happy? Complete happiness is not possible for me unless I see you. Okay, I stop here. So the devotees were there, and the way they celebrated Sri Ramakrishna's birthday was singing and dancing, singing the names of God. That's all, not a big feast or anything like that. They say Rishi Shraddha, there is a word. The obsequial rituals that are being performed after the death of a monk is a big thing. Many monks will come and gather there, and people would think that there would ensue a big party, dinner or lunch, something like that. A big thing will be happening there. But then what happens? All the big gathering of monks, they all sit together, and there will be one homa, fire ritual. All monks will be chanting some mantra, and they will be pouring ghee, clarified butter, into that fire. And this will go on for a long time. And after that, over. The Shraddha ceremony is over. You don't get anything. So that is the big fanfare of a Rishi Shraddha. Because the monks, they themselves perform their own Shraddha or this obsequial ritual before they take the vows of monastic life. So they have already killed themselves. They have become like ghosts in this and in the eye of the world. They no more remain bound to the ritualistic formalities of the traditional life in this world. They are free from that. So they perform their own obsequial rites themselves. Therefore, when they die, what is the question of performing Shraddha for them? But the monks do remember them. That is why they perform some homa fire ritual, and big arrangement going on, people running about, bringing bilwa leaves, flowers, ghee, and then finally everything is burnt and then it's over. There is no feast at all. A little bit of some ghee will be given on the hand. That is all called prasada, and you are finished. So it is like that. So on Sri Ramakrishna's birthday, what was this festival, celebration? The celebration was singing and dancing in the name of God. So to the devotees, Sri Thakur said, one cannot be spiritual as long as one has shame, hatred and fear regarding one's spiritual practices. Then Thakur said, great will be the joy today. It is not great will be the feast today, but great will be the joy today. And then he said, but those who will look around and hesitate to sing or dance while being mad in God's name will never attain God. How can one feel any shame or fear when the names of God are being sung? People will say that this fellow is good, this fellow is spiritual, and then we will feel shame. So Thakur encouraged them, saying, now you all sing, all of you. The meaning of the teaching should not be explained in extreme terms. That we have to understand. Sri Thakur did not mean it that way, that you have to start dancing. It does not mean that those who sing and dance are spiritual persons. Rather, it may be the opposite of spirituality. Once there was a kirtan or singing of the glories of God as the glories of Sri Krishna in Sri Thakur's room at Dakshineshwar. Many of the devotees wept in joy while dancing and singing, while chanting the name of God. And after the event was over, someone came to Swami Vivekananda. He was then Narendranath. Then he said, see, so many of the devotees had trance, had bhava, trance. They wept while the kirtan or singing was going on. Swami Vivekananda jokingly remarked, maybe they had quarreled with someone at home. That is why they were weeping here. It may be true also. Who knows? The idea is those who have reached a higher level in spiritual life, they are less concerned about the outside world, less concerned about what others would say, how others will take it, and such other foolish things. They are more concerned about reaching their spiritual goal, which is coming nearer and nearer. They are much eager then to reach that goal. That is why they would engage as much energy as possible for covering the last stretch of their journey. They are not bothered about the opinions of every Tom, Dick and Harry who have nothing to do with spiritual life. Then we read that one devotee had been discussing Om with Kedar before Sri Ramakrishna. He said, this eternal word, the Anahata Sabda, is ever present both within and without. And Thakur interrupted, saying, but the word is not enough. There must be something indicated by the word. Can your name alone make me happy? Complete happiness is not possible for me unless I see you. Sri Sri Thakur is saying that words are expressions of our mind, thoughts. What we think, we say that. And words are used to communicate some ideas to others. But each word indicates something that is so named by the word. That is why the Yoga Sutras says that the words produce some sense of the existence of a thing which has not reality in the mind. In the mind there is no reality, but there is a sense of that thing. These mental images are called vikalpas in Yoga Sutras, an alternative suggestion, not the real thing. The aphorism is there, you may remember, Sabda Jnana Anupati Vastu Shunyo Vikalpaha. So the meaning is what mental picture one would form about a thing or an idea by using a word is not the thing itself, but an alternative suggestion of it. Now to make it very clear, like suppose you say sugar, S-U-G-A-R, sugar. Your mind can visualize the form, but connect it to a taste called sweetness, to this form. But these things are happening in mind. It is all mental image of sugar, not the real sugar. That is why Sri Sri Thakur says, but the word is not enough. There must be something indicated by the word, and that is real. The word Om is sacred because it is the indicator and the best one at that of the spiritual reality behind every one of us. But it is an indicator, not the thing in itself. It is the best guide to reach the thing that is indicated by this indicator, Om. I am not going to elaborate on this Om further, because I have discussed about it in very great detail in the classes of the Mandukya Upanishad. You may refer to that if you so like. Then I would just read from the Gospel. Don't have much time, just for one paragraph maybe. So the devotee, the eternal word itself is Brahman. Sri Ramakrishna to Kedar. Oh, don't you understand? He upholds the doctrine of the rishis of olden times. They once said to Rama, "O Rama, we know you only as the son of Dasaratha. Let sages like Bharadwaja worship you as God incarnate. We want to realize Brahman, the invisible existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute." At these words, Rama smiled and went away. So, well, I will stop here today. It is the later discussion goes a bit further. So, I will end this discussion with chanting Om once. Om.